That would be fantastic.
Please.
But I'm
do
sure
not
it's going to
talk
be very
about
important,
Donald Trump.
very informative. Do we have somebody who's going to, what's it called? Evaluate?
Well, that's good.
He said yes?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I'll evaluate.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Dr.
Thank you.
Tim.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So we gather to talk about speaking. And if you think about it, if somebody ever asks you to give a speech, there's a fair amount of effort that actually goes into giving a speech, right? So if somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, I've got a meeting going on, I've got an event going on, I need a speaker, would you be willing to come and give a speech? Unfortunately, what most of us do, because of our Toastmasters past, is go, sure, not a problem, I'll be there, right? Which is great until later on, you start to think it through and go, oh God, really? Why did I say yes? But at any rate, if you've agreed to give a speech, now you move on to the next part of the overall process, and you have to create a speech. All right? Now, if you're lucky, you go out in your front yard, and magically a speech will be delivered via a Amazon drone craft, but that's actually not happening yet. So no. So basically, you're going to have to come up with a speech. Arguably, if you're going to go to the effort of creating a speech, practicing a speech, and then ultimately delivering a speech, you want it to be successful, right? How do we judge the success of a speech? Arguably, what we do is people pay attention to us while we're speaking. Okay, that would be sort of an important part of the overall thing. But if there's a message behind our speech, if we're trying to motivate the audience to do something, we'd like it that when we're done speaking, they stand up and they go out and they do whatever they're supposed to do. Or we've changed the way they view the world. We've changed the way they perceive things. If we can cause any of those things to occur, then I would say that we've probably been successful. And these are all wonderful, fabulous things. Motherhood and apple pie, I think we can agree on it. But how? Okay. Ultimately, I think it all comes down to the speech that you create. So writing a good speech is arguably where giving a good speech starts. Okay. And how many of us, when we were going to high school or college or post-college education, ever took a speech writing course? I'm not even sure if there is such a thing. Is there such a thing?
Speech class.
Speech class. Okay, I would go to speech class, but not a lot of speech writing. It's a big deal, so you would think that there'd be something that would focus specifically on that, right? Mm-hmm. And even if and I've had a speech class in high school, and they never really spent that much time on writing it, right? Make sure it fits in the time. Okay, well that's fine. That's not really quite the guidance I'm looking for. I'm looking for guidance on how I can create a speech that's going to reach out to my audience, connect with them, and make them believe what I'm telling them. Challenges. Okay, well, since none of us potentially are an expert in doing this, in our lives, whenever we're called upon to do something that we don't feel that we're an expert on, what do we do? Well, more often than not, what we do is we look around and we say, listen, although I'm doing this now, there has to be somebody else who has done this before me. Somebody else who has been successful doing this. If I can find somebody who's good at doing this thing, then maybe I can emulate them. Maybe I can do it like them, and that will make me be successful also. Okay, that's fine. If I was going to run a marathon, which I don't really do, I would probably take a look at somebody who runs marathons and figure out what they train, what they eat, how they practice, what they do the day of, all that, and I'd follow what they did. Okay, well, but now we're talking about writing speeches. So who the heck do we know who writes speeches? Well, God's honest truth, I really don't know a lot of people who write speeches. I know some people who give speeches and do a pretty good job of it and stuff like that, but I don't know who's writing their speech. So if we sort of kick around in our heads and we say, okay, stop, wait a minute, what speeches do we know? There are some famous speeches out there, right? There's some speeches that, we all sort of go, wow, that was a famous speech and stuff like that. But who? And, the list is actually relatively short. We've got Dr. Martin Luther King, of course. We've got John Kennedy. There's another person on that list. It's Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln. Damn, he's old. What the hell? Look who we learned from somebody who's that old. He's on the penny. Hey, look, it's Abe. But wait, back up for just a moment. One thing that we sort of forget about Mr. Lincoln, outside the fact that he was tall, he was skinny, and wore that funny little hat thing, and by the way, he met an untimely end and stuff like that, is Abe Lincoln was the president of the United States during an incredibly tumultuous time. Okay? He came into office before the Civil War. The Civil War happened while he was in the office. He had a zillion decisions to make and stuff like that, and then it ended while he was in office too. And you know, the country would tore itself apart. Lots of decisions to be made. You know, so every time Abe Lincoln gave a speech, it was a huge deal because there was like a war going on. And obviously his words, you know, they didn't have the best communication, all that sort of stuff like that. But his words would influence people. It would either make them really angry or really give them the confidence they need and stuff like that. So every time Abe Lincoln gave a speech, it was a huge deal. Turns out Abe was actually a pretty good writer of speeches. Okay? One of the best examples of Abe Lincoln's speeches that was a very good speech was one called the Gettysburg Address. And if you've gone to high school, you undoubtedly encountered the Gettysburg Address. It's actually a great speech to encounter. And the reason it's a great speech to encounter, it's short. It's a really short speech. Gettysburg Address is 270 words. It took Abe like a little bit over 2 minutes to give the whole dang speech. He did it, sat down, he was done with it. But it's a huge speech. I mean, the content of the speech is enormous. He basically lays out the reason for the Civil War. He lays out the reason that the North is doing what it does, and it lays out the goals for what he wanted to accomplish in 270 words. Wow! You know, I get warmed up in about 300 words. Cool. So how did Abe put that speech together? Well, actually, Abe did a fantastic job of it. Obviously, so look, he kept it short. And I think there's a lesson for all of us in keeping it short. When we talk to an audience, the audience are busy people, they got other stuff going on and stuff like that. We need to keep in mind that they probably don't have an awful lot of time that they're going to spend listening to us. So whatever our point is, we need to probably get to it pretty quickly. Don't beat around the bushes a lot, right? What else can Abe teach us? Well, if you take a look at the Gettysburg Address, the way it starts out is he talks about a bunch of things that everybody agrees with. No controversy whatsoever. It's a country, it was founded by our fathers like 47 years ago, and what's going to happen is in the audience that everyone's going to be nodding. Yeah, you know, what he's saying is correct. That is, there's no question about that. So he gets his audience in the mood to be agreeable before he launches into the stuff that's more controversial. So if you're going to present an idea to an audience that is controversial, how to go about doing it? Do you just put it there? Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all being here. You're laid off. No, stop. A much better way to go about presenting big ideas to an audience is to not present it all at once, but rather present it in small increments. Lead up to where you're getting to. And for each one of the increments that you present to them, give them a justification for that increment. What happens is you're taking small steps to get to the final idea. Abe Lincoln was a master of doing this. He spoke in difficult times about difficult issues, but he did a great job of it, and we can all learn from how Abe Lincoln gave speeches. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jim. Well, that was